And welcome to episode 18 of RaiderZone, the podcast. I'm Will Brienza. Alongside me tonight, Brennan Deviney and Riley Sullivan, as we bring you what's happening in the world of sports. Today, obviously, it's March. It's towards the end of March, so that means none other than the NCAA basketball tournament going on. And man, there was some madness this last weekend, which we'll get into. And with it being March, that also means that NFL free agency is underway. And those will be the two topics that we really hit on today. And we're going to start with the NFL. And obviously this first week, a lot of signings, almost basically, I'd say 70% of the top 100 went off the board. Obviously there's still some big names left, which we'll get into who's left. But Riley, I'll start with you because you sounded really excited about free agency. What signings have you liked? What signings have you thought were questionable after the first week of free agency?
Well, you couldn't have said it any better. I am very excited. My favorite part of the year outside of the Super Bowl for football season is NFL free agency followed by the NFL draft. So I have three signings I love, three signings I hate, and then an honorable and dishonorable mention. I'll start with the signings I love. The first one is Anthony Harris. He signed with the Philadelphia Eagles on a one-year, $5 million deal. And for a guy who's consistently a top 5, top 10 safety in the NFL, to get him on a one-year, $5 million deal is insane. I was expecting him on like a one-year, maybe $10 million deal back to Minnesota, but instead the Eagles got an absolute bargain and someone that will really elevate their secondary. Next signing I really love is Will Fuller to the Dolphins for 1 year, $10 million. You got to look at the rest of this free agent market for wide receivers. Kenny Galladay is about the only one that cashed in. And what was that, 4 years, $72 million, I believe. So Will Fuller at 1 year, $10 million. I think that he's an elite deep threat in this league. The Packers were really setting the house to get him, but ultimately couldn't get it done. The Dolphins have probably one of the best deep threats at this point in the NFL for a really nice 1 year deal. And then my final one, I'm staying home with the Cleveland Browns. John Johnson, 3 year, $33.75 million. Word on the street has it that he accepted much less money to play in Cleveland than he could have other places. And that's what you love to hear if you're the Cleveland Browns. That means you're totally winning this deal, and you really can't get much better than that. For the deals that I really dislike, super surprising. A lot of people are big on this signing, but I really dislike Trent Williams at 6 years, $138 million. I've looked at the contract, and it's pretty much a 3 year deal, because if you were to cut him in 2024 or have him on the roster in 2024, it'd be a $26.9 million cap hit. In 2025, it'd be a $29.37 million cap hit. And in 2026, it'd be a $33.06 million cap hit, which is just, that's not what you need on your team is a 35, 36-year-old tackle costing that much money. Even if he's still good, that's too much money in one old player. If he goes down, you're sitting on a paperweight. But going into 2024, if they cut him, they'll eat $12.4 million in dead cap. So they have a chance to get out of there, but no matter what, you're going to be eating over $10 million in dead cap for cutting this guy. And I think he's going to be elite for 2 more years and like good or just above average for the end of his career. So don't really like the specs on that contract. Next is Nelson Aguilar for 2 years, $26 million to the Patriots. I think that's a pretty bad signing. If Will Fuller's out there for 1 year, $10 million, I don't know how Bill Belichick is justifying going for Aguilar at 2 years, $26 million. He's looked pretty bad at times in his career. He's had 2 seasons, one of which you could call average to just above average. And last year, he had a good season as a deep threat, but he doesn't really perform many other roles than going deep. He can't really offer you much in run blocking. He's a one-trick pony, and I don't think that's what you really need to be paying for. You don't need to be paying $13 million for that. And then finally, my dishonorable mention for the signings that I just really don't like is Bud Dupree at 5 years, $82.5 million. It could end up being a 2-year deal worth around $34 million. But if they cut him after those 2 years, they're going to be eating $9.6 million in dead cap. I think Bud Dupree's overrated. I think he's really injury prone. And out of all of the years he's spent in the NFL, all of the seasons that you can really look at and analyze, he was good in 2016 and he was good in 2019. Every other year, he's an average to below average player, and that Steelers defensive line is absolutely loaded. So this is a guy that's getting a ton of opportunities to win on one-on-ones, and more often than not, over half of his career, he hasn't been able to produce elite numbers. His numbers are super inflated. He's definitely a cleanup guy, and I think after 2 years, the Titans are going to cut him, and this is going to be one of the worst signings we've seen in recent memory.
Okay. Riley really breaking down his picks for love and hate. I love it. A lot of great takes. We had a couple similarities in ours, which I'll get into mine. But first, I'll go over to Brendan. A weekend of free agency. What are you liking? What are you not liking?
Yeah, so I agree mostly with Riley. He covered a few of mine. I like a couple wide receiving additions to both teams in New York. I love the Kenny Golladay pick up for the Giants. Much like Matthew Stafford, he was just in a really bad situation with the Lions. That offense did not fit either of those two veterans well. Coming from Detroit, going to play with Daniel Jones, I think that's going to help Jones as well. I think Dave Gettleman, he gets criticized a lot, but I think got to give him credit here with this pickup for the Giants. And then same with the Jets too. Corey Davis coming from Tennessee. Still has a lot of years ahead of him. Only 26 years old. 3 years, $37.5 million. The Giants are in a rebuild mode. So this is a good start to that rebuild with the Jets. If Sam Darnold's still going to be the quarterback next year, this is at least going to help him, give him another target to throw to that can actually go out and make plays. I think he even has more upside than Juju Smith-Schuster with Pittsburgh. So Corey Davis, a good pickup there from the Jets. And then with the Browns as well, arguably could be one of the best free agency moves that Andrew Berry has made for the defense. Even going before Andrew Berry, Cleveland in general, one of the best defensive free agent moves. There's a story that with him at Boston College, his roommate was from Cleveland, Kevin Kavalek, and somehow he started talking with Kavalek at Boston College, and he sold him on Cleveland. So just right there, Riley mentioned that he took less money to come to the Browns. Just right there is a culture change going on with Cleveland. Players are choosing now to play for the Browns in free agency, which is something that we have not really seen a lot before. A couple of moves that I did not care for. I forget if Riley mentioned this one, but Chicago with Andy Dalton. Out of all the quarterbacks you could try to go for, I don't know yet if I haven't looked at the draft board, so I don't know if the Bears are going to try to look for a quarterback in the draft. But man, Andy Dalton's just not the right move to go from Mitch Trubisky now to Andy Dalton. You didn't upgrade or downgrade. Just the Bears are just in a bad spot with the quarterback position. Another one that I did not really, for whatever reason, I saw, Bill Belichick and the Patriots getting a lot of praise in free agency. Re-signing Cam Newton, I wouldn't praise him for. I'll say it until he retires. He's an overrated quarterback, and he's just, after 1 year, I can see that he just does not fit that system with Bill Belichick well at all. This experiment is never going to work out with the Patriots. Not a fan of that signing up in New England, and it's going to come back to bite New England in the butt because that's just not going to work out as Cam Newton as their quarterback.
Yeah, I think their biggest thing is at 15th, they're definitely going quarterback. I think every mock draft has that. And I guess for $5 million, you could have worse. But I agree. I think Cam Newton's definitely past his prime. For me, though, I kind of broke it down like Riley. A few that I love, a few that I hate or dislike. I'm not going to say hate for a couple of these, but I'll start with what I love. New England covering that tight end position. Since the departure of Gronk, it's been a weak position for the Patriots, and they cover it with two big names. They get Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith. A questionable move to go after two guys, but two guys that are 25 and 26 years old. They have Henry for 3 more years and Smith on a 4-year contract now. I think they're both great signings, both pass catchers, both great blockers. And overall, New England will never hurt at that tight end position, barring any injuries to both of them now. Again, I agree. John Johnson to Cleveland, that was huge. Cleveland's obvious biggest hole last year was their defense, in particular their secondary, and adding the top-rated safety when it comes to the PFF grade, it's huge. You take away from the Rams defense that was ranked number 1 in the NFL, and you grab one of their best player from the secondary, one of their best overall defenders, and you get him on a 3-year contract. He takes a pay cut because Cleveland's a destination now, is what people are saying. So it's really weird hearing that. But John Johnson, huge signing for Cleveland. Absolutely love the pick. And then I also love Las Vegas getting Kenyon Drake. 2-year, $14.5 million, so kind of low salary there to a guy that has the potential of being a number 1. But now they kind of have a two-headed monster there in Vegas with Jacobs and Drake. So I like that pickup for the Raiders. Having 2 top back caliber running backs on your roster. We see how it works for some teams like the Browns, like I was just talking about. Now Vegas has their own little thing going there. Moving over to pickups I hate or dislike. So one I dislike, Dallas re-signing Dak to that contract. I agreed with Dak last year. He deserved more money than what they were offering, but it's so risky to offer a man 40-year, $160 million when you saw his leg look like an L. That's just what I'm scared of. I'm not scared. I'm happy Prescott's going to get paid because he definitely deserves it, but I'm just scared for Dallas that they might have – I'm not even a Dallas fan, so I don't know why I'm scared for them, but I don't know. That's a risky move when you saw the injury. He is a young guy, and obviously we've seen players come back from much worse, like Alex Smith this year, coming back from a leg injury that almost took his life. But that's a huge amount of money to go to a guy that you don't even know what you're going to get 100% because of his leg injury. Then Riley, I agree with you on the Williams pickup. 6-year to a 32-year-old offensive lineman that's definitely been showing signs of regression is a little weird to me, but I guess, hey, San Francisco, if you know he's your guy, go for it. And then Chicago, Andy Dalton, 1 year, $10 million. That's the guy you're trying to go that replace Trubisky with. I don't like either of them, but I'm still taking Trubisky, and that takes me to another point. Trubisky to Buffalo. That was I think that's a good signing by the Bills. Trubisky is not a starting quarterback in my opinion, and that's why I think it was a good signing because now you have I think he's a below average starter, but he'd be a great backup to have on your team. And now when Josh Allen, if he ever goes down, you have a guy that can at least has some experience and come up and play some quality football. But yeah, those are really the pickups I like and dislike from the first week of free agency. And so obviously there still are a few guys left. A couple marquee guys still available in free agency. Defensive end Melvin Ingram, defensive end Davion Clowney, wide receiver Sammy Watkins, Richard Sherman still available, James Conner, Leonard Fournette, Malik Hooker, and Antonio Brown. So now we'll jump into that. Riley, where do you see some of these guys signing?
Well, I'd like to preface this by saying I don't really know where Richard Sherman's going to go, but we do have to keep in mind Richard Sherman is a player that's representing himself, and he's also probably one of the most intelligent players in the NFL. So I think that Richard Sherman's probably going to wait until like a few weeks before the season starts, maybe like once OTAs and training camps start and people start to really whittle down their rosters, he's going to sign with a contender. I wouldn't be stunned to see him with a team like the Cleveland Browns if they open up some cap space. The Raiders are super interested in bringing Richard Sherman in. I think man, even a team like Miami, who I think is pretty loaded at corner, they've got a bunch of young corners on their roster, and I like the fit of Richard Sherman there. They took Noah Iguahagne last year in the first round. I think it was a little bit of a stretch. And if you put a guy like Richard Sherman above a young project corner, I feel like there's nowhere to go for those guys but up. So I like Richard Sherman of the Dolphins, honestly. Looking at Jadeveon Clowney, he just visited the Browns today, and Jadeveon Clowney is probably one of the most underrated players in the NFL at this point. It's crazy because his career swing has gone from being extremely overrated to now being underrated. And I think the Browns really might sign him after this visit today. If not, look for him to go to another contender. Pittsburgh, I could see them giving him a nice one-year deal. He's a guy that can cause pressure but doesn't exactly finish on the sack end of things. So on a loaded defensive line in Pittsburgh or playing opposite of Myles Garrett, I could really see him finding a lot of success. And then this is where it starts to get fuzzy, is these wide receivers and these running backs. I don't think that there's much of a market for these guys. Like Sammy Watkins, I don't know where he's going to sign. I don't know that anyone really wants to sign Antonio Brown, especially if the Buccaneers aren't going to bring him back. And Malik Hooker has a terrible injury history. He had so much promise coming into the league, and injuries have just completely derailed that. I think Malik Hooker fits on a team that is looking for high-risk, high-reward guys. So the younger rebuilding team, maybe the Jaguars, maybe the Lions. Washington football team, I think, could use a guy like Malik Hooker. So I don't know. These are some marquee names, but the situation is something that the NFL has never seen before. A market that would normally be there for these guys really isn't for some of them. Mm. I wouldn't be surprised if you see every single player on this list outside of Richard Sherman signed for $5 million or less per year.
I could see that too. That's not a bad take at all, Riley. Brendan, I'm going to shoot it over to you. Some of these guys, big names, still in the market, still have some juice left in the tank. Where you think they sign?
Yeah, for Leonard Fournette and Antonio Brown, Buccaneers haven't closed the door on them just yet. But out of the two, re-signing with Tampa Bay, I think is going to be Leonard Fournette. Like Riley mentioned, Tampa Bay doesn't need Antonio Brown to get back to the Super Bowl, but Leonard Fournette added a whole different dynamic to that offense in their Super Bowl run this past year. But the defense, there's a lot of guys on here. I do think Jadeveon Clowney has a good chance to sign with the Browns, just to add some depth to that line again. It's already loaded. But if Olivier Vernon isn't going to, be healthy for a whole year, and if maybe not even come back with Cleveland, I think Clowney can definitely help that line and add some, more talent. Riley mentioned that he's underrated, and I totally agree. Malik Hooker, there's a lot of talk about him going to Dallas. He met with the Cowboys, and that went well. Dallas is a team that likes taking risks. He's a strong safety, a very talented safety, and would definitely mold well into that culture down there in Dallas. The defense needs work, obviously, so he fit that secondary pretty well. So out of the other guys, they're all toss-ups. I don't know where James Conner goes. I think he might re-sign with Pittsburgh because if Steelers don't re-sign him, then that offense gets hurt and damaged a little more. So, it's toss-up with these guys. A lot of high marquee names in free agency remaining, and that's what happens when you change the cap in the NFL. So, it's a wild free agency so far.
Definitely is. Now, Ben Johnson-Bowers just joined us. Ben, where do you see some of these free agents going?
All right, and glancing over this list, 3 guys I'm fairly confident I can say where I think they're going. James Conner, I have a gut feeling I think he's going to re-sign with Pittsburgh, probably stay in the Steel City for at least a little bit more. AB, he has been connected to Seattle. Supposedly, Russell Wilson wants to have him. And honestly, he's not a bad, cheap pickup because even in a normal year, he's probably not going to fetch you a lot of money anymore. Just after all the antics that he went through off the field, completely trashing his image and value. I don't think it's a bad move for Seattle. I think that would be a nice move to solidify their receiving core. He'd be a nice guy to pair with DK Metcalf in the pass game. And then finally, Leonard Fournette. I got to say, I feel like he re-signs with Tampa Bay. I think that just makes sense from his perspective. Because to be honest, they're probably going to run it back, at least make it to the NFC Championship. You got to imagine Tom Brady, with his football IQ, even as he slowly but surely declines physically, the football IQ is keeping him at the top of the game. So I got to imagine they go on a deep run. And that team is definitely primed to do it again in 2021. So I think Leonard Fournette's going to end up making the smart decision and re-signing with the Buccaneers.
All right. For me, going down the list, so Melvin Ingram, I see him going somewhere that needs a defensive end, but needs one for more of a help factor to get them over the hump. And two teams that really bring that to my mind, and one of them you guys are going to make fun of me for, but one is Buffalo, a team signing with the Bills. Just a little extra help on that defensive line, a team that made it to the AFC Championship. They just get a little extra help there for cheap. Or Dallas. Dallas's defense was definitely their downfall, but they were competing before Dak's injury. I think they get Dak back if he's playing like he was last year, and they add a piece to their defensive line like that. They've already added to their secondary. That can help them potentially win a very weak NFC East Conference and get back to the playoffs. Moving on to Damian Clowney, Riley, I saw the same report that he was working out with Cleveland today, and I 100% agree. I think he goes to Cleveland on a cheap deal. He wants a one-year contract. I don't think he wants any more because he wants to try to prove himself to maybe get a bigger deal. So I'm saying Clowney to Cleveland. Cleveland wants a defensive end on the other side to help Myles Garrett. Vernon was playing really well, but obviously he had a very bad injury towards the end of the season. So I think Clowney's their guy, but we'll see. And then moving into some of these, or I'll talk about the secondary guys first. Richard Sherman, I agree he's one guy that will not be left out. I see him going to a contender. So obviously he talked about he wants to team up with Joe Woods again, which means Cleveland. But Cleveland's obviously made a pretty big splash in free agency already. So I think that ship has soared. So I'm going to say no to Cleveland. But I could see a team like Arizona, Buffalo, or Miami. Again, three teams that were right there in contention for playoffs or made the playoffs. And just need a little help in the secondary. Arizona, obviously, losing Peterson was huge. So a guy like Sherman not only brings talent, but brings that veteran presence as well. In Miami, just a good defense, but very young. So Sherman would be huge for them, in my opinion. And then Malik Hooker at safety. I see him going to a team that's willing to take a risk. A team that's needs secondary help, but obviously, like you guys said, the injury to Hooker was huge last year. So a team that's willing to take a risk wasn't quite in the race last year. And three teams that pop in my head that need secondary help and are willing to take a risk are Atlanta, Denver, and Las Vegas. I could see them really taking a chance on the safety. In Atlanta, you lose Keanu Neal. You replace him with Malik Hooker on a cheaper deal. Denver, you just franchise tag Simmons. You get help with Hooker there, some depth. And with Vegas, obviously, the defense has always been the shaky part about the Raiders team ever since they've been in contention. Now, looking at these skill players, I agree. The market's not there, but there are places for these guys. I think Sammy Watkins ends up signing with Baltimore. Just a team who always seems like they need wide receivers. So I'm going to go cheap deal there. Watkins to the Ravens. James Conner, if he doesn't re-sign with Pittsburgh, I'm going to say the New York Jets. They have a few young guys, and then obviously they had the oldest running back in the NFL last year in Frank Gore. But I see them taking a chance on Conner if Pittsburgh doesn't re-sign him. Fournette, I have Tampa Bay or New England. I have, you guys all said it. Tampa Bay re-signs them because of playoff Lenny. Or New England, who likes to have four running backs that are somewhat decent on the roster at all times, goes after him and teams him up with James White and Sonny Michel. And then Antonio Brown, I have three teams listed here. Either he re-signs with Tampa Bay or have teams that want to help that receiving core New Orleans and Houston were two teams I put down just because New Orleans still has to await post-surgery news from Michael Thomas, and then Houston's kind of a train wreck right now, which we're not going to get into that, but I have them down there just because they lost Will Fuller and Hopkins over the course of 400 days. So it's tough being a Houston fan right now, guys, that's for sure. But that's really it for the NFL. Obviously, we'll have more updates as the week comes, and then in a few weeks, we'll have our first-round mock draft here on RaiderZone where we break down the first round of the NFL. But that will take us over to college basketball. And, guys, what a weekend it was. I can't remember the last time I saw that many double-digit seeds move on in a bracket. And, Ben, I have to ask you a question. Do you know who Oral Roberts is?
Yeah, I think they're a religious school somewhere in the southwestern corner of the United States.
As Oral Roberts,
heck of a duo.
They're still in it, man. They're still in it. The 15 seed Oral Roberts. But after the first the first round is technically the 4 playing games. So after the second round and the round of 32, we got our final 16. We're down to our Sweet 16 now. 16 teams are left. In the West region, you have 1 seed Gonzaga and 5 seed Creighton going at it this weekend, and then 6 seed USC and 7 seed Oregon. Oregon moving on in a no contest, and because of that, they're well rested and take down Luka Garza and the Hawkeyes. USC, Kansas didn't look that great against Eastern Washington, so I wasn't surprised by the USC win there. And then Creighton, they're the team that's really surprised me in that bracket right now. But Gonzaga, we kind of all figured they'd roll through that western side. In the East, 1 seed Michigan will take on 4 seed Florida State, and 2 seed Alabama will take on 11 seed UCLA. Ben, you did get the Abilene Christian pick right, which allowed UCLA an easier path to the Sweet 16. And then in the South region, 1 seed Baylor taking on 5 seed Villanova, and 3 seed Arkansas taking on 15 seed Oral Roberts. And in the Midwest, this bracket is all kinds of jacked up. You'll have 2 seed Houston taking on 11 seed Syracuse, and 8 seed Loyola Chicago taking on 12 seed Oregon State. So, Brendan, I'll start with you. With these 16 teams left, what's your new Final Four prediction? And do you still have Gonzaga winning it all?
Yeah, so for my Final Four now, with the Sweet 16 in place, coming out of the West, I still do have Gonzaga. Between USC and Oregon, I think USC will win that game. They're playing, they just tore up Kansas. Mm-hmm. They should be able to beat Oregon, who, although they did beat Iowa, that might be a close game between the Trojans and Ducks. I don't think Creighton's going to be that much of a test for Gonzaga. Bulldogs are better coached. So I think they'll defeat USC and come out of the West. Down in the East, that's an extremely tough one to pick. Between Michigan and Alabama, I think it is going to be 1 against 2, with Michigan coming out. I just don't see the Crimson Tide getting it done there. They should beat UCLA, although the Bruins somehow have made it this far. Pac-12, give all the love in the world to the Pac-12.
100%.
We thought the Big Ten was going to have a good tournament. How about the Pac-12? Crazy. Between USC, Oregon, UCLA, Oregon State, it's just crazy. Mm-hmm. Up in the South, Baylor against Villanova. I did not expect the Wildcats to be this far, but I'm still going to go with Baylor to win that game. Arkansas, Oral Roberts. I don't know if the Golden Eagles can get it done again, but I'm going to go with Arkansas. And then that gives me a very, kind of dull Elite Eight in the South. Baylor against Arkansas, it doesn't really excite me all that much. But I'm going to have to go with Baylor again. So that gives me 3 number 1s, but it's not going to be 4 because it's in the Midwest. So Loyola, Oregon State, I'm going with the Ramblers again. Best defensive team in the tournament. they play defense like they're out of their minds when they play defense. I love it.
And sorry to interrupt, Brendan, but I'm just going to say Loyola Chicago not only upset Illinois, but they did it handedly. They
ran away with that.
They owned the entirety of that game. There was at not one point Illinois was playing better basketball than Loyola.
Yeah. In this Midwest, I saw a stat that it's the highest, if you add up all their seeds, Loyola an 8, Oregon State a 12, Syracuse 11, then you got Houston as a 2. But it's the highest number for seeds. If you add all those up, it's 33. It's the highest in a region since 1986, where the East region had a total of 34. So just right there, the Midwest just got completely blown up with Illinois going out, West Virginia going out. So did Tennessee. So, yeah, I'm going to go with Loyola coming out of that region. Another Final Four run for the Ramblers. I'll say they beat Syracuse. I feel like Syracuse is going to get that done again against Houston. So 3 number 1s and then the random number 8 for my Final Four. You want me to still pick a champion?
Yep. You have in our bracket challenge, you have Gonzaga winning it all. Do you still have Gonzaga taken down at this point, which you would predict Michigan? And who do you have, Loyola and Baylor?
Yeah. Yeah, I still have Gonzaga beating Michigan. And then I'm going to go with Loyola beating Baylor in the semifinal. I just think Baylor, we've talked about how Baylor is just – they almost lost to Wisconsin. I don't think they're going to have an easy time here with Villanova. I'm going to go Gonzaga against Loyola, and then that gives Gonzaga the easiest chance they have to finally win a national championship.
Love it. Love it.
Which they will.
All right. Ben, we'll shoot it over to you. Break down how you feel the next few rounds will go and after you see who's left.
All right, Gonzaga should win solidly over Creighton and continue to move on. I still have them as my champion, making it all the way and getting Mark Few a championship at long last. USC Oregon, Mobley might and should be really enough to power USC past Oregon. Did good against Kansas. At the same time, Oregon riding a lot of momentum coming off that big win over Iowa. I mean, that wasn't just a win. That was a 15-point drubbing of one of the best teams in the country. That's a heck of a performance. So I think you could flip a coin on this. I'll go with USC. I'll take the Trojans here, just off of star power. I'll take the Trojans. They're going to get smacked by Gonzaga in the Elite Eight, regardless of who wins that game. But I'll go with the Trojans. Then continuing on, Michigan still managing to hold on. This is where I expected them to be without Isaiah Livers, who it would be a miracle if he returned. I think they bow out to the Seminoles. And the Seminoles will go on to play Bama, who's going to take out the UCLA Bruins. And from there, I think Bama should get past FSU to head on to the Final Four. Then Baylor over Nova. I agree with Brendan. I didn't think Nova was going to make this far. I thought they were a second-round and out team, especially without Colin Gillespie, who tore his MCL earlier in the season. But they've surprised me. I thought if they were going to win that second-round matchup, it was going to be by a couple points, but they won it very solidly, went out there, got it done, played great. But I think this is where it ends. I just can't see him getting past Baylor. I think that win in the second round was a big testament to Jay Wright, how great a coach he is and how well he prepared that team. But I don't think it's going to be enough this time versus the Bears. And then Arkansas, Oral Roberts. I'm going to ride with Oral Roberts. They've got the most dangerous, or one of the most dangerous guard big duos between Max Abmas and Kylo Banner in the country. I think they get one more big upset before bowing out in the Elite Eight to Baylor. But yeah, I mean, both those guys are giving you near 30 points a night in the tournament so far. And the way they can space the floor with their three-point shooting ability, it's hard to defend. And then finally, I'm going to take Syracuse over Houston. Let's go. Let's take it. In the zone we trust. Jim Boeheim has shocked me a lot this tournament. I thought Syracuse was a very mediocre pedestrian team this year. But with that zone that they play, they've been able to go out there and really shock a lot of teams. I think they do it one more time, continue on there, or they'll do it 2 more times. as I have them in my new Final Four. And then Loyola Chicago over Oregon State. Then they'll lose to Syracuse. So my Final Four right now, Gonzaga, Alabama, Baylor, and Syracuse. And then the semifinals, I got Gonzaga over Alabama. Should be a good game, a close game. Zags will narrowly get through. And then Baylor over Syracuse, the Orange. Finally, in their run, the Final Four, Baylor moves on and then loses to Gonzaga in the championship. And Mark Few, as I said, gets his championship at long last.
All right. Riley, let's send it down to you. Take us through your bracket after we see these 16 teams remaining. Your new bracket, like what you think happens now.
I'm probably not going to break it down in depth. I'm not a huge NCAA men's basketball watcher, but based on what I watched in the opening weekend, I do think Gonzaga is pretty dominant. So I'll take Gonzaga over Creighton. And then USC, Oregon, I'm kind of torn on that, but Oregon looked really good in the first two games that they played. So I'll do Gonzaga, Oregon, the Elite Eight. I have Gonzaga going to the Final Four. Looking at the East, I'm definitely taking Michigan over Florida State. I think that Juwan Howard is showing that he's definitely nowhere near a step down from Bayline. I mean, he's pretty good. So I'm going to take Juwan Howard in Michigan against number 2, Alabama. I think Michigan makes it out of the East. Looking at the South, Baylor is also they've been a dominant presence so far in the tournament. I'm taking Baylor over Nova. I think the magic ends here for Oral Roberts. We saw Florida Gulf Coast make it to the Sweet 16 and then kind of fall back down to earth against Georgetown a few years ago. We've seen that Oral Roberts has I looked at the record. They've played really good stretches of basketball, and they've played not so good stretches of basketball. And I just don't see them playing a good stretch all the way through the tournament. I think Arkansas ultimately gets it done. They were a super physical team in the round of 32, but they have played some close games. Despite that, I think Arkansas takes the cake. And then in the Midwest, I'm definitely taking Houston over Syracuse. There's no way that Boeheim's son keeps lighting it up like he has been. And I'm definitely taking Loyola Chicago over Oregon State. I can't remember his name, but the forward that looks like Farva is absolutely unstoppable. I don't see Oregon State trumping him. So in my Final Four, I'm probably going to go Gonzaga, Michigan, Baylor, and then Loyola Chicago. I think Loyola Chicago can really beat Houston in that Elite Eight matchup. They've already been to a Final Four. It wasn't too long ago. They're a great team. I think they have all the pieces to stay physical. And, this is definitely the most unlikely tournament I've ever seen. But winning it all, man, that's a hard call. I'd love to root for the underdog, but I'm going to go with Gonzaga probably to win it all. I just think that their coach is probably the best coach left in the tournament, and that's what it's going to come down to for me. This is a year where a lot of things have been unpredictable. COVID's changed a lot, and if you've got the best coach, I think you've got the best shot at winning.
All right. So to break down mine, I'm going Gonzaga over Creighton. I picked UC Santa Barbara over Creighton. It almost happened, a 63-62 game. I still think Creighton definitely has their weaknesses, and Gonzaga wins pretty easily. And then I'm going USC over Oregon just for the fact that Mobley is on USC. They played really well against Kansas, although Oregon played really well against Iowa, but I'm still going to go Trojans here. And then I have Gonzaga over USC, and the Zags get into the Final Four. In the East, I have Florida State taking down Michigan. Obviously, this year, all year long, the Big Ten was better than the ACC. But we get down to ACC Big Ten here in tournament play, and I think Florida State gets it done. I think they knock out the last Big Ten team remaining, and the Seminoles move on to the Elite Eight, and they'll take on Alabama. I think UCLA's run comes to an end. They also escaped an early exit, just like Creighton. Michigan State had that game won in the first 4 game and blew it, but UCLA able to make it to the Sweet 16 after winning in overtime. But I'm going Bama, Florida State, and I have the Seminoles taking down Alabama. And Florida State, I'm sticking with my original pick that I had when there were 68 teams left and saying that they're one of the Final Four teams. In the South, I'm going Baylor over Villanova and Arkansas over Oral Roberts, just for the sole fact that these two teams can score. Villanova, a team I had getting upset in the first round by Winthrop, but they surprised me. They make it to the Sweet 16. but I think they're done here in Oral Roberts. I saw a tweet, though, that said Florida's going to it said Florida, we're going to win, and it said Oral Roberts, ORU, because of their Oral Roberts University. So maybe they do it again, but I think Arkansas's offense is just way too much for them to handle. And then I'll have Baylor over the Razorbacks for the final, getting into the Final Four. And then down to the Midwest, I think Loyola Chicago is the best team in this bracket right now. I think Houston's one of the worst 2 seeds in this tournament, so I definitely think the Ramblers take down Oregon State, and I have Syracuse knocking off Houston as well. But then I have Syracuse run inning to Loyola of Chicago, who make it to the Final Four once again, just like they did in 2019. And I have them taking down Baylor to get to the championship. So I have Loyola of Chicago, and then I have Gonzaga on the other side. And I have Gonzaga taking down Loyola of Chicago as well. Mike Few gets his first championship, and Gonzaga gets the perfect season. But, man, wouldn't that be – I think that's the People's Championship at this point. Let Gonzaga finally have their reign, but let Loyola get there as well. I think that's what everybody would be okay with seeing. So I'm going Gonzaga over Loyola of Chicago. But obviously, guys, this first weekend was absolutely wild. I mean, just talking about double-digit seeds winning. I mean, up in the West, you have Ohio knocking off Virginia. In the East, you have Abilene Christian, UCLA. In the South, North Texas takes out Purdue and busts Riley's bracket on the first night. And Oral Roberts, obviously, taking down Ohio State, busting Ben's bracket as far as champions go, and or championships go. And then Midwest, obviously, it's still going on in the Midwest. Syracuse and Oregon State move on to the Sweet 16. Loyola knocks off Illinois in the round of 32. Just a wild weekend. So, Ben, I'll start with you. Which upset was your favorite, and which team or teams did you think looked extremely good in opening weekend?
I mean, my favorite has to be Ohio over Virginia. That was a great thing to see there, especially see the videos on Twitter of Jeff Bowles, their head coach, celebrating after. You know, it feels good. It's a shame they couldn't get it done in the second round and get to the Sweet 16, but that was a great win there. Honestly, didn't see that one coming. I thought Virginia should have at least pulled away a little bit at the end there to win that game, but credit to the Bobcats.
Go Bobbies.
And then the team that I think looked the best in the opening weekend, Oral Roberts. They ran through Ohio State, then kept the run going. Now they're in the Sweet 16, and I've got them in the Elite Eight. I mean, that guard duo of O'Banner and Abmas, a guard-big duo, I mean, it's so lethal because O'Banner isn't just your traditional big man. He can also shoot the ball, so he spreads the field, spreads the court that way. And when you combine that with the fact that Abmas is pretty much the next coming of Steph Curry on the college level. I mean, against Ohio State, went 5 of 10. The dude's been lighting it up from 3. It was a little bit of an exaggeration, but great three-point shooter. That's tough because it stretches the court in a way that if O'Banner pops, you got to prepare for that. He can also roll, and he can hurt you that way. So I got to go with Oral Roberts.
Okay. Brendan, favorite upset and which team do you think looked the best in the opening weekend?
Yeah, so after re-examining these upsets, some of them I should have seen coming, right? Like Oral Roberts, Ohio State. The Buckeyes were one of the most overrated teams
100%.
in all of college basketball this year, 100%. If I knew more about Oral Roberts, I probably would have picked that upset. But at the end of the day, that did not surprise me, Ohio State losing in that game. Abilene Christian, Texas, yes, that is – no one saw that coming. But let's remember, Shaka Smart has done just an average okay job with Texas. Every time that they get to the tournament, they do choke. Shaka Smart has not proven at Texas that he can really go on a deep run in the tournament, and they choked again here with Abilene Christian. And then, Loyola, Illinois, a lot of people are calling that an upset. Ramblers taking down Illinois, the number 1 seed. But, Loyola, they're a proven team now. Like you mentioned, Will, they obliterated Illinois at the end of that game, running away with it. I think the Ramblers were even the favorite going into that game. Porter Moser has established Loyola Chicago now as a consistent program, a winning program, and they're going to be, an annual top 25 team now. But that being said, the team that impressed me this whole past weekend was definitely Oral Roberts. If you look at that Florida game, they should have lost that game. Let's be honest. But they found a way to win. They got the job done, beating the Gators. Going to have a really tough test now with Arkansas, but all you have to do is score more points than the other team, and that's what they did. So I know that sounds really cheesy, and that was probably not a good thing to say, but that's the name of the game, and they got the job done.
All right. Riley, over to you. Favorite upset, and which team did you like watching the most? Which team was your favorite, the best team this weekend, you think?
In terms of favorite upset, I'm a huge Ohio State fan, so it was sad to see them lose to Oral Roberts. So I can't choose that one. But looking around, I would agree. I'm not a huge Texas fan. My sister roots for Texas for absolutely no reason. So to see Abilene Christian beat Texas was super satisfying. And I got to rub it in my sister's face a little bit. So enjoyed seeing Abilene Christian take on Texas, end up getting the win. But my favorite team to watch, and this is probably a surprising one, was Oregon State. Oregon State had to beat Tennessee, and then they beat Oklahoma State. And maybe you can make the argument that beating Tennessee really isn't that impressive. But one thing that I do believe is impressive is Cade Cunningham is the obvious number one favorite to go in the NBA draft. And I think having the best player on your team, especially when it comes to March Madness, is a super big advantage. So to see Oregon State play team ball and really confuse that Oklahoma State offense and limit them, they're going to be dangerous. They might win their next game. They might have a chance at winning this Sweet 16 game. But I mean, they were fun to watch. They really were giving each offense that they played some major problems. They're able to stretch the floor, and they're a ton of fun to watch. They are doing some crazy things in this tournament, and I certainly didn't expect them beating Oklahoma State with Cade Cunningham.
All right. Yeah, that was a shock to me as well. Oregon State to be this far. I had Tennessee beating them in my bracket, so for them to make it to the Sweet 16 is pretty impressive. For me, my favorite upset by far were Roberts over Ohio State. Just because I'm with Brendan. The Buckeyes were overrated, and they showed how bad they are down the end of the stretch of the game, and even worse in overtime. So many opportunities to win that game, they just couldn't get it done. So that was by far my favorite upset. I always like seeing higher seeds win too. So to have a 15 seed win is pretty cool. The 9th ever. But which team that I think looked extremely good? The two teams that I have in my championship with my what ESPN calls your second chance bracket. When you pick your picks from the Sweet 16, I thought Gonzaga and Loyola were by far the two best teams in this bracket as far as the eye test went in opening weekend. Gonzaga didn't make a game out of either of their games. They beat. Let me look back at these. They beat Norfolk State 98-55, and then they came around on Monday and beat Oklahoma 87-71. So really, just inserting their dominance throughout the entirety of both games, and then looking at Loyola of Chicago, they take down Georgia Tech by 11 in the game that was kind of close, but they ran away with there a little bit at the end. And they, like me and Brendan said, they come back in the round of 32, and they absolutely own a team that has two of the best players in the sport on their team. And I thought that showed me that Loyola and Gonzaga right now might be the two best teams in basketball as far as the eye test goes. So those were the two teams I thought looked extremely good in opening weekend and could make a run. But that is it for episode 18 here of RaiderZone. That takes us now to Last Call. And this one's kind of a fun one. What is your moment of glory in sports growing up? So it could be you're playing a blacktop game, you dropped a 36-piece on your friend's head, or you were in Little League Baseball and hit a walk-off homer or double or something, or you were in football and you had the game pick. I don't know, anything like that. But Ben, I'll start with you. What is your moment of glory in sports growing up? It's a tough one. You have to think.
It is. It is. Question.
Ben's like
Probably
over here. I have
an
like
NFL.
70, man.
I got to go probably last year in an intramural game. Out of 21 points, I had 17. Had a backdoor layup to seal the deal. I was on fire, unconscious from 3. It's a different game.
All right, so Ben Johnson Curry over here drops a 17-piece on the way to a win. Brendan, what is your moment of glory in sports growing up?
Throwing it back to summer of 2013, on my travel baseball team in the championship game, and we're up by 1 in the only 7 innings, so bottom of the 7th, which is technically the bottom of the 9th, and we're up by 1, and my coach throws me out there to try and seal the deal. I allow 2 runners on with 1 out, then I come back and strike out the next 2 to close the game. Cody Allen, out there for Fairview Park travel baseball team. So
I was going to say Brendan Rivera.
What?
I was going to say Brendan Rivera.
I was thinking of doing like the bow and arrow celebration.
There you go.
But yeah, closing out the championship game.
Love it, love it. We got the closer on our team here at RSM. Riley, what is your moment of glory in sports growing up?
My definite moment of glory in sports growing up is in 7th grade. I was a member of our football team, and the kid who was the starting right guard was sick all week, so he didn't practice any. And so they made him sit the first half, and they put me in. I'm a 7th grader starting on the 8th grade team. And I was nervous because all these guys were way bigger than me. I was only like 5'3", 150 pounds in 7th grade. And so they called a play. It's called Dave Left. And my job on that play as the right guard is to pull and seal the edge of the line and make sure that my running back had a lane to run through. So they called Dave Left. I'm this little kid out there, definitely outmatched. I take my pull, and this kid about twice my size at defensive end had no clue I was coming for him. He was standing straight up. I leveled him. He hit his butt. He landed on his butt, and my running back ran about 50 yards untouched into the end zone. So that was the best block I had ever thrown in middle school football, and it felt good to level a guy about twice my size.
That's amazing. Just the description. I love it. I love it. So we got our 3-point shooter over here, our catch and shoot guy in Ben. We got the closer in Brendan DeVinny, and now we got our Haas and Riley Sullivan, the big man up front that knocks guys double his size on their butt. I have a lot. I mean, I was kind of no, I'm kidding. My biggest is probably throwing it back to high school baseball. This was my freshman year, so I was on JV, so it didn't mean anything. But we had a really good team, both varsity and JV. We had really good teams my freshman and sophomore year. But we were playing our rival Marlington, so obviously, even though it was JV, it meant a little more, you know. You're playing your biggest rival, and the Marlington team was literally just a team full of kids I played with growing up. I was always on the Marlington team when it came to like summer league. And so I'm playing all my old teammates basically, and the one kid earlier in the game, he said, I hit a double, and he said, if I was pitching, you wouldn't even touch the ball. And I was like, oh yeah? So he ends up coming in to close the game. Marlington's up 4-3. He comes in to close the game. There's a runner on second and third with 2 outs, and he's the pitcher. And I lined a double off the wall again for a walk-off double, and I just pointed at I did the bow and arrow, I believe, at him. And I was like, I thought I wouldn't touch it. We ended up winning the game, and everybody loved me because I got that JV dub. You know how it goes. But that was definitely that was awesome to do to our rival. Too bad I never had a walk-off on the varsity level, but. And then last week at Rock Hill, I dropped a 36-piece in the game to 50, so it's whatever. I was like, Ben, lights out from 3. I literally never shot like that in my life, though. I might have used every 3-pointer I'm gonna make in the year of 2021 in one game. So
Marlington had me out there, Will.
Yeah.
Oh, that would have been game. That would have been game over.
Yeah, Brendan would have sat me down on 3 pitches. He would have made me look silly. But
unless you made me, if you made me mad out there, there might be a pitch thrown a little. You might get some chin music up there.
Plunk me and load the bases.
I was intimidating out there on the mound, believe it or not.
Had chewing tobacco on your lip at the age of 14.
Just a big wad of big league chew.
Yeah, big league chew. Love it. What was your go-to pitch, Brendan? Did you throw an old Uncle Charlie, or were you just speed kills?
I had a decent changeup, but
okay.
I was sidearm. I threw sidearm.
Oh.
So I ran it in on some guys.
So we got an Adam Simber on our hands.
Not that bad. Not like submarine, but
okay. Like Justin Masterson, a little more subtle.
Yeah, pretty much like that.
Okay. Is that the guy that you looked up to when you were a pitcher? That'd been about the time.
Yeah, he was actually really good with the try.
Yeah.
I miss him.
Yeah. But that's it for episode 18. So again, as always, we thank everyone that listens. For Ben Johnson Bowers, Brendan Deviney, and Riley Sullivan, I am Will Brienza, and we'll be back at you next week. And in the near future, we'll be back at you with a NFL mock draft. Good night, everybody.